Your attention, please. Welcome to the Erasing Shame podcast, and we are talking about ADHD, Attention Deficit HD. What does HD stand for?
Hyperactive.
Hyperactive Disorder. And I'm joined with my co-host from season 5, Hannah Lee Sandoval. Thank you for coming back.
Hello.
And continuing the conversation here. And this is a new chapter and a new season, and we're focusing on Christian Asian mental health. And so in that context, we're going to talk about ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. Big fancy terminology. Help us understand what it is.
I'm not a subject expert here,
That's
but
okay.
And it's hyperactivity disorder. So that's the official term. And it's usually like AD/HD, but there are a few types. A lot of people don't know that. And it used to be called ADD back in the day, I think just colloquially, but the official term is ADHD. And it's basically a condition where, the person is not neurotypical, which means average brain or, normal person's brain. We're known as neurodivergent. And I think as of the DSM-5, maybe even the 4, but ADHD is now also considered on the spectrum. So the ASD autism, or just the spectrum. Along with autism, Asperger's, and other things. But it's basically this idea of not having a typical brain. And it's the executive functioning and the organizational sort of the responsible part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex up here that doesn't function as normally and is usually not as like fully developed. So often ADHD people are known for like forgetting things, maybe getting distracted easily. If you have the type that is the inattentive type, which is one of the 3, then generally it'll be kind of the quieter kids in school who are maybe daydreaming. They don't cause a lot of trouble in class, but they will be zoning out a lot. And generally, I feel like the people with inattentive ADHD are on the quieter side. The louder, more bigger, hyperactivity, that's the one that everyone thinks of when we say ADD. Talks really fast, talks a lot, gets distracted, squirrel, right? Forgets things, is irresponsible, is always late. That's a lot of us anyways. And that's the hyperactivity in the ADHD, the H. Now, the third type is combined type. So that's features of both inattentive and hyperactivity. So then you'll get both kind of symptom sets. So I actually have combined type. So I go from sometimes when I'm like really not stimulated to daydreaming, fantasizing, my brain just kind of goes into outer space. And then other times I just cannot sit still. And, being an Asian American person, being somebody who grew up in church, being a female, I wasn't diagnosed till I was 18 because I didn't present as a typical ADHD person. And I grew up in quite a strict conservative home, went to Christian school. So there was a very narrow sort of set of things that were okay. And I did my darndest to stay within it, but I was always coloring outside the lines. But when I finally got to, a secular big university environment, and the same structures and supports that are in a private school or a conservative Asian home with helicopter parents, right? Those are all gone. So I floundered and finally got my own diagnosis of combined type. And what a lot of people also don't realize is that ADHD comes along, there's a high comorbidity rate, which means that a lot of us also have anxiety, depression, and I would say also trauma, right? Some trauma in our histories. So it's a very complicated diagnosis, in my opinion. It's not so straightforward, but most people find a whole lot of relief and usually more clarity and an ability to start planning ahead of like, how can I treat this? I have my diagnosis now. How can I process difficult things that have happened or are still happening? And how can I ensure better success and better self-sufficiency and my ability to live the life that I want to in the future, right? By getting some support.
Wow, you packed a very dense explanation there. So let's take a breather and unpack that a bit in the time that we have in this episode. The stereotype, I guess, that at least I have, is
Mhm.
the ADD part, where people have very short attention span,
Uh-huh.
and that has been pronounced through kind of the habits and socialization that's
Mhm.
happened to us with social media and digital devices that
Yes.
have trained us and caused us to be habitual in scrolling through our timelines very quickly. If something doesn't catch our attention in 3 seconds or less, then we're moving on to the next thing. Websites
Mhm.
are designed that way now.
Mhm.
Everybody's fighting for attention, and so that tears at us um, technologically.
Yeah.
And so, on top of that, people's brains, as you were describing, some have a different developmental um, process. And
Mhm.
so by
Mhm.
default, they have a shorter attention than the norm, whatever the norm is.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure scientifically, they're saying 50% of people have a certain range on the however they measure attention. And then if you're
Mhm.
outside of that range, then you qualify for disorder, or if it's 66% using a bell curve. But we don't need to get
Yeah.
into science of that.
Right, right.
Here we want to help people understand where they might be at in their lived experience. So
Mhm.
when you use
Mhm.
fancy, and one of the things I've always wanted to do at Erasing Shame is break down all these complicated words that might be
Mhm.
thrown around, especially in academia or in education, and normal people. It's like, oh, I have short attention. They can understand that
Uh-huh.
and make it understandable
Right.
and make things normal. And then
Mhm.
so that's going to be part of the erasing shame and stigma.
Yes.
So hyperactivity, yeah, we run into people that are loud or very energetic and have lots of
Mhm.
ideas, and
Mhm.
sometimes off the charts, and then they seem different than a normal person because they can't rein it in.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
when you mentioned that, oh, ADHD is also another category where someone can have both.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing it's like fast mode switching or something. I'm not sure how that works, and probably works different for each
Yeah.
person because we're
Yes.
all very complicated people.
Yes. Intersectionality. Absolutely.
Now,
We're
that's a
all
big
more
word
than
too.
one
So
thing.
anything over
Yeah.
10 character, I'm going to pause and unpack that.
Yeah. I mean, it's this idea that we are all more than one or two things, right? We're complicated beings.
Yes.
And we are formed by our culture, our gender, or lack thereof, our religious upbringings, our nature, our nurture, the DNA, the childhood we had, the state and country we're in, the time we're in. I mean, everything informs who we are, and they're not like static pieces, right? That unchanging things, but we're constantly figuring out the
Mm-hmm.
chaos, right? The pieces of
Mm-hmm.
who we are and who we want to be and who we don't want to be. Yeah.
Yes.
You
So
know,
for the series of conversation we're going to have, I'm going to encapsulate it as mixed episodes.
mixed episode.
which has a certain meaning
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the psychological world, but mixed
Right.
episodes, we're going to talk about a mixed bag of topics
Yeah,
in our
yeah.
conversation. So
Yes.
ADHD is going to be this one. We're going to mention a couple other ones: postpartum depression and interracial marriages. So those are two
Mm-hmm.
of the other ones coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And so back to the topic at ADHD, and I myself have a diagnosis of bipolar, which is kind of kissing cousin and next door
Mm-hmm.
to ADHD.
Very
So
much.
sometimes I do manifest short attention span
Mm-hmm.
and definitely hyperactivity when I'm in that high
Mm-hmm.
hypomania phase of my
Mm-hmm.
bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
But ADHD isn't part of my vocabulary in interpreting my life experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I can confess and honestly say, yeah, I probably exhibited those symptoms and behaviors and those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, I was at a mental health summit, and I learned that people with lived experience, meaning they either have the diagnosis or just have the symptoms without the diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
as they learn to manage that in a healthy way, they become lived experts.
Love that.
Whether they have the education or not, they
Mm-hmm.
are experts, or they can grow and work toward becoming experts at managing themselves, using that
Mm-hmm.
common phrase, self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you, Hannah, you've mentioned that you have lived experience and you have a diagnosis as ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
So
Combined
what was
design.
it like to be diagnosed? You said it was really hard because you were Asian
Yeah.
American female in a structured environment, and then in college it was unstructured, so
Mm-hmm.
that exacerbated your symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Well, it revealed and exposed things that I had been
Reveal and
barely able to
exposed.
manage.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the things that people don't know about ADHD is it's not, there's a lot of us who are actually out there advocating for different title for it,
Mm,
because attention deficit actually isn't very accurate. It's that we are
mm.
paying attention to something else and we can't always choose what we pay attention to because our brains function
Oh.
differently.
Hmm.
But there's something called hyperfocus, which I call the ADHD superpower. But if I'm really, really into something, which I think
Okay.
everybody, even neurotypical people, have experienced this,
Hmm.
I can go 6 hours and it feels like 30 minutes, right?
Mm.
But the
Okay.
depth at which I can process information and not be distracted, even when people are trying to distract me and talk to me, if I'm in the
Hmm.
zone, or some people call it flow
Yes.
state, right?
Yeah.
um, I literally don't know what's going on around me and I forget my body,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like people forget to eat and go to the bathroom and drink and sleep. It's kind of like, if anybody out there is addicted to K dramas or video games, it's like that mode. But it
Yes.
could happen anywhere with any topic that interests a person with ADHD. So, one of my success, sort of strategies that I use myself and teach my clients, because I am a
Hmm.
psychotherapist as a clinical social worker, is I
Hmm.
tell them, make sure you're choosing things that bring you joy, like Marie Kondo your life, time, and energy, right? Even your
Hmm.
relationships. Choose things that really spark something in you, and that's really kind of the dopamine, or that thing in our chemical that's
Yeah.
like, ooh, interesting, stimulating, motivating, sparkly. And choose to, if you can, make that like your life, part of your life, your job or whatnot. So for me, people get dopamine and serotonin going in my brain.
Uh-huh.
So I became a therapist. That works for me because I'm highly motivated and I can listen to people for hours. I can read books on mental health or watch TED Talks for hours and hours and hours and not get tired.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
exhilarating, right? So
Hmm.
that's one thing. Hyperfocus also enables me to be a great test taker. And in school, actually, the way LAUSD kind of has things is if your grades aren't low, it's actually kind of hard within school to get all the admin to sign off on you getting tested, right? Because they'll be like,
Hmm.
but your GPA is above 3.0. You don't have
Hmm.
ADHD because they assume it's people who aren't doing well in school. And generally, from a mental health and logistical perspective, you don't have a disorder officially in a diagnosis unless it's negatively affecting your functioning in a very serious
Yeah.
way in at least
Hmm.
two areas of your life. So if you're just that way at home and you're not like that anywhere else, it's not an official mental health diagnosis. Or if you're just like that at school, but at home you could focus, then they're still going to be like, no, it's probably not. It has to be two or more. So with
Hmm.
adult clients, it's
Hmm.
usually like, oh, my relationships are falling apart. I'm not performing well at work. I'm about to get fired, or I keep failing the promotions,
Hmm.
or my grades are struggling. For me, I got into a really great college. I had a perfect, GPA getting in, but once I got in, I started to fail for the first time because all
Oh,
the,
wow.
the scaffolding or the structures that I had before were all gone, and I
Yes.
realized I don't know how to stand on my own 2 feet. Right. And I
Hmm.
didn't really know myself very well. I didn't know I had ADHD. So I just thought I was weird.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of self-esteem issues because I didn't know that there wasn't something wrong with me. I was just different. Right. So getting
Hmm.
the diagnosis, starting to learn about it. There was a lady, Dr. Teruta or Tanaka, but this Japanese American lady gave me a book, Driven to Distraction, written by two guys with PhDs who both have ADHD, which was
Oh,
like,
wow.
you can get a
Hmm.
doctorate when you have ADHD. light at the end of the tunnel for me, right? Like we can accomplish things. Dr. Hallowell, I don't know what the other guy's last name is, but Driven to Distraction is one of the like
Yeah.
OG ADHD, like, OG Bibles. But that really shed so much light, gave me a path to understand myself as like, I'm normal for somebody with ADHD, and I
Yes.
never felt normal. So to realize like, oh, there are others like me, I'm not the only one, and there are
Uh-huh.
ways to manage and handle and address some of the symptoms that don't make me like other
Yes.
people, but I can do things that others can't do, right? So I can take a
Yes.
6-hour test,
Wow.
no problem, because I don't have test anxiety. I hyper focus because I'm highly motivated not to fail as an Asian American and
Mm.
Christian.
Mhm.
So I'm really fortunate. I think a lot of people who are in my category of Asian American and Christian actually don't get diagnosed like ever.
Mhm.
Or maybe very, very later in life after you're done with school. I'm lucky that
Mhm.
I did fail academically like from the get-go, because I had other trauma related diagnoses and stuff that
Mm.
probably were manifesting much larger than my ADHD. But the people who did my evaluations caught it in time. So I'm very
Mhm.
fortunate. I got to try Adderall. I got to try like several non-stimulant medications, and eventually we just landed on like Ritalin and Adderall here and there to get me through both of my academic programs. I actually chose not to take it when I was in seminary, because
Okay.
I wasn't like I need to get 4.0, right? It wasn't an
Mm.
academic thing. I was there for spiritual reasons. So I was
Okay.
like, as long as I learn, I'm not worried about achieving. My formation is more important. I took that off myself. But when I went to grad school for my mental health license and everything, I had to go back on, because I was like, I need to pass these classes and these are really, really hard. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
So how does the medication and
Hmm.
talk therapy and any other things you did for your recovery and management fit
Hmm.
with your faith?
Yeah.
So
Oh
we'll
my
talk about
gosh.
several dimensions of this because you just mentioned the
Yeah.
medication. So, and then you went or lowered the dosage and went off for a little bit. So
Uh-huh.
what difference did that make in your mind?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then what else did you do to manage your symptoms?
Sure. So gosh, as a Christian, and it's hard for me to parse out and separate what is faith and what is culture, because they were just so integrated growing up. I grew up in the Korean immigrant church,
Hmm.
and I feel like a lot of churches were more ethnic than we are Christian sometimes. I hope I don't
Hmm.
offend anybody out there, but I'm sure a lot of people are like, uh-huh, I get it. So Korean cultural values were just as strong as
Hmm.
Christian biblical values, and often like
Hmm.
equated with each other. Like academic excellence is for the glory of God, right? So don't go to retreat or mission trips because you have to study for the SATs or your finals or
Hmm.
your APs, things like that.
Hmm.
Like you're not godly if you don't take an AP class and pass. Those
Hmm.
are the ideas I grew up with.
Hmm.
So when I got to college, which was a name brand college, but I couldn't perform the way I was before, I felt like a failure, first and foremost, to God, that I was
Yeah.
embarrassing
Wow.
him, that I was shaming him.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt ashamed of myself. I felt worthless the first time I got a B. I actually had a
Mm.
panic attack and started having suicidal ideation because I wasn't going to get an A in my first
Oh,
quarter in a class.
oh
And that sounds
goodness.
so like, oh my God. But I feel like there's a lot of other high achieving
Hmm.
Asian American Christians who are like, yeah,
Hmm.
I could totally understand that. But
Hmm.
because I was around so many other people, but mostly Asian American friends. And at that time, I had a good number of Christian friends still, because I stopped being Christian very early into my college career. um it was hard because a lot of other people around me were successful and succeeding, but I also came from a certain kind of home that was relatively broken, undiagnosed, untreated mental health issues in my family, including myself.
Hmm.
So I was also dealing with having a very severe major depressive episode, and having
Mm.
regular anxiety attacks, because I just went from small Christian school, very Christian Korean home, to like big diverse university, right? I didn't know up
Yeah.
from down, left from right. So I had
Hmm.
a faith crisis. I also had an identity crisis at the same time, because my identity was good little Korean Christian girl who follows the rules as well as I can, right? Makes lots of mistakes. I'm kind of a weirdo and an outlier. That was part of my identity. I
Mm,
usually am quite clumsy, say the wrong things, can't control myself. I'm not as good as many other people. I'm never going to be my full best, but I know I try hard and I hope that's good enough for God, right? Like where
mm,
my heart is. And
mhm.
then I still wanted the same things, but because of my mental health issues, I wasn't performing the same. So in college, I was like, I'm now a bad Christian, right?
Mm,
I'm not going to fulfill God's plan for my life to become
mm,
Dr. Hannah Lee in
mm,
psychology, and change the world for the
mm,
kingdom of God. All
mm,
of that came shattering down, and I really had to deal with
mhm.
like, do I have any worth if I cannot perform and achieve
Wow.
academically, right?
Mm,
So I so blessed had the right people at the right time, mostly women, come into my life during that time, and one gay man, my first psychiatrist. Um,
okay.
they were just so gracious, had a lot of answers for me, and understood that I was coming from this tiny little bubble of a reality, and that my bubble had just been popped and that I was floating, and really helped ground me, and affirm me and
Good.
connect me to treatment.
Good.
I hated
Mhm.
my first few therapists and actually stopped going to regular talk therapy because it was honestly like a bunch of old white guys and sometimes women,
Mhm. Mhm.
who I walked out of there feeling misunderstood, ashamed. I didn't know how to talk about my identity or myself. I felt judged. It was so
Mm.
painful. But then
Oh.
finally, I got desperate and went to a psychiatrist because at that point, I was like, I'm having suicidal ideation and it's really scaring me. And I'm
Mhm.
about to like drop out of school. So this kind used to be Christian, but now just happily gay and not Christian
Mm.
psychiatrist, he was so
Mhm.
good at just talking me down from the ledge. Got me on
Okay.
Zoloft, my first
Yeah.
antidepressant, saved my life.
Mhm.
Really, I think God used it to save
Wow.
my life. But in the
Yes.
course of that, because there's such a stigma against mental health, there's a stigma against mental health medication, there's a stigma against getting a
Yes.
diagnosis, right? And to
Yes.
this day, I talk to my family members and they're like, we just can't help it. This is just how we grew up, right? Like it's just
Mhm.
ingrained in us to think that that stuff is like not good, right? It's dangerous somehow.
Mm.
But for me, it was life. It was a second chance at life. It meant that there were treatment, options available to me, that there was hope, that I didn't always have to feel this
Yes.
way. And
Okay.
Zoloft did kind of numb me out over time. So I eventually went off, and I started to make better life choices. But at that time, it saved my life, enabled me to stay in
Good.
school, to work part
Mhm.
time. And the combination of that and the ADHD medication kept me in school. I was on probation for 5 years though, and it took me 5.5 years to graduate. So there's that,
Whoa. Mhm.
which was an embarrassment in itself, of course, to my community and my family. But now I say, I boast in my weakness because I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
I am where I am now, and I am
Mhm.
who I am as a result of the journey, the difficult journey that I've had. Right. So I wouldn't choose another Hannah Lee. I think there was a long time, maybe up until I was 30, that I would have, if somebody could have said, hey, let's go back in time and genetically alter your DNA, be like, yes, no ADHD, none of that inherited
Uh-huh.
intergenerational trauma and mental health issues.
Uh-huh.
I also have PMDD and cyclothymia. So I have a mood disorder that's both hormonal, but even if I was a man, I think I would have had a mood disorder, right? So very close to that bipolar diagnosis. But,
Yes.
yeah, up until I was 30, I totally would have opted out of all those things if I could have. But I can't, right? So I'm
Mhm.
grateful that I am who I am today, because as a psychotherapist, and I, will also
Mhm.
become a ADHD focused life coach.
Mhm.
I'm able to speak to people who are suffering and don't know how to
Yes.
get out of the hole they feel like they're in, to say, hey, I have
Yes.
been there. I was
Yes.
considering dropping out of college and becoming a bartender. And now I have
Right.
my master's degree. I'm married with two beautiful children. I
Yeah.
never thought this life would ever happen for me. The things that I
Hmm.
wanted since I was very young, I never thought it
Hmm.
was possible. But by the grace of God, in the form of non-Christian professionals, right? Like that was something I never could have
Sure.
imagined happening for me, but it
Hmm.
did. So now I view that mental health is an important part of spiritual health. Now my faith and spirituality and my self-care are all together, because for me, self-care is a part of worship. It's a part of how I take care of
Hmm.
this temple and vessel, right? If I don't
Hmm.
do it, how can God use somebody who is like ragged and deteriorating and not caring for me?
Yes.
So a big thing I
Hmm.
had to also, grow out of and heal from was codependency, right? And that's a
Oh.
big feature I feel like with ADHD people,
Hmm.
because the other side of all of that brain stuff is that we're super connected with people. We're super intuitive, super empathic and sensitive.
Okay.
So it's deeply relational, but it can
Wow.
go in such a dangerous place where we end
Hmm.
up, addicted to toxic relationships, getting abused, but we
Hmm.
feel like there's something wrong with us anyway, so at least this person won't abandon us. But then moving towards this, like, interdependency and independence, where I can stand on my own 2 feet, but I choose these
Yes.
people and these structures and communities to hold me with love and grace through hard times, and also to be a place where I can share the gifts of who I am, right? So yeah, it's
Amazing.
been incredible.
What a journey. Rejoicing with you that you're in a much, much better place. I know
Yeah.
life still brings challenges,
Oh yeah.
and
Especially as a mom.
but
Yes.
but the adventure is worth it, and fighting the battles and not feeling like you have to be the giant
Yeah.
and the victor.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's a good place to wrap here. If
Sure.
you can give us a closing word for people who aren't sure if the symptoms that they're experiencing is worth checking out, if medication or being evaluated, assessed, and diagnosed would be worth it for them.
Yeah. And
If they
working
have,
through the stigma or shame.
so what would be those
Yeah.
symptoms that might be a good signal for them to say, okay, I've
Yeah.
heard Hannah's story. I've learned a bit more about this. Maybe I should take a little test and see if this
Sure.
would be helpful so that I don't have to struggle so hard
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
managing things on my own.
Yeah. Just realized is that in ADHD, the A for anxiety and D for depression are both there. So
Oh,
cool, right? I'm sure somebody has like
mm-hmm.
some cool meme or acronym, but I just realized that for myself right now. So I
Your
would say,
superpower at work.
yeah, right. The connections. So, if anybody watching or listening out there, if you have experienced in your life the inability to focus and concentrate, even on topics that mildly interest you, like when you really want to focus, and it could be like, sorry, pastors, but I used to be one. So it could be the sermon on Sunday where you're like, I really want to
Uh-huh.
focus, but for some reason I can't, or like a college class, right? Or a lecture that you really are like, I do want to, but something in me, I keep getting distracted. Plus, if you've had anxiety attacks or just like intense experiences of anxiety or just flat out panic attacks,
Mm.
and you've also had like some mood stuff with feeling depressed, very sensitive to feedback, I would definitely try and first rule out ADHD. Well, first I would start with go check out the anxiety depression stuff, because
Mm.
depression is actually an inflammatory disease, so it's a physical illness, y'all. So take
Oh,
care of
wow.
yourself, right? Isn't that
Mm-hmm.
crazy? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really mind, body, soul, spirit. We are one being. God created us as
Yes.
an integrated being. So if you've been very worried, very sad, like intensely, where people are noticing, and your normal
Mm-hmm.
behavior, performance, and life, everything is starting to fall
Mm-hmm.
apart, and you also can't concentrate, which the inability to focus is related to also anxiety and depression, even without the ADHD. But when you've had all three for a lot of your life, and if you realize that I'm not living the life that I want to be, and it hurts and I'm frustrated and I don't know who to go to, go online and type in ADHD quiz. It's as easy as that.
Mm-hmm.
And if your score is
Good.
on the middle to higher side, go talk to somebody, right? You can go put out on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, TikTok. Hey, anybody else out there kind of feel like they have ADHD? Do we all, or is it just me, right? Somebody will get back to you. And yes, I think our society and technology, we are moving towards more people having that kind of brain. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I don't use those kind of words often, but I would say if it's harming you in any way, making you struggle and hurt in any way, just like you would get any wound that wouldn't heal for more than a couple months checked out, get yourself checked out, get help, share with others if that you are able to trust, and read up on it. It doesn't hurt, right? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, so much for sharing your life, Hannah. So glad that you have experienced what you've experienced, and you are finding life to be abundant and joyful and helping others through this. Great talking with you. Until next time, we'll see you again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Erasing Shame podcast. Check out the show notes at erasingshame.com and subscribe to our email for updates. We would love to hear from you, so please add your comments at our website or on social. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app, and you can also subscribe on YouTube or follow on Facebook. Please add a rating and review so we can reach more people with our message of health, hope, and compassion. This podcast is the digital outreach of Christian Asian mental health. Please consider partnering with us by making a tax-deductible donation at erasingshame.com, and together we can resolve the mental health crisis for every person. Thank you.